นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ As I mentioned just now, as we were practicing meditation, we're cultivating these three qualities of sati, mindfulness, sampajanya, clear comprehension or all-round knowing, and atapi, effort, energy or ardency. And when we practice sitting or walking meditation, we're cultivating those qualities in the most direct way, the most intense way. These are the ideal postures and situations for developing these mental qualities that are right at the center of the Buddhist training for overcoming suffering. We have no choice but to develop more self-awareness, this quality of knowing our body and mind in the present moment, if we wish to understand where suffering comes from and how to overcome it and end it. Of course, we don't spend all our time in sitting and walking meditation, and this is a constant doubt that arises in people's minds. How do you practice when you're not on retreat, you're not sitting meditation? How do you practice? Well, you're cultivating these same qualities at other times of your life as well. But you have to learn how to adapt to the different tasks and activities we're involved with in life. You have to learn how to go with the flow. But you build on what you're learning in the practice of meditation. And that's where wisdom comes from as well. The wisdom you learn in practicing meditation can be applied at any moment in your day, in any aspect of your life. It's not limited to the retreat center or the temple or the monastery or to the meditation cushion. These qualities that we're developing through meditation are there for us to access and benefit from all the time. They're the fruits, the rewards of our practice that grow over time. So that's why it's important to keep coming back to what we call formal meditation. Have some discipline, some regularity in your practice so that you keep building up these qualities in the best way, the best circumstances. But then not to neglect, as you finish your meditation period, say first thing in the morning or in the evening or whenever, as you finish that period of meditation, don't give up there and leave it all behind, because that's so easy, isn't it? Ajahn Chah used to say, it's one thing to put effort into your meditation and develop some clarity and wisdom, but it's even harder to maintain that when you leave the meditation room, wherever you've been doing it. But this is part of our practice, learning how to be skilled and wise in maintaining wholesome states of mind and these skillful qualities throughout our day. Cultivating right effort, how to prevent unskillful states of mind from coming up, how to abandon those that have arisen, and then how to bring up and maintain these skillful states that we already are becoming familiar with in meditation, but haven't yet perfected or cultivated to the point that they're already always there. There's still more we need to practice. That's why it's really useful living with teachers, or at least having contact with meditation teachers who have practiced more than us. They know more than us, they practice more than us, they're more skilled because they have a good effect on us. When you live with a teacher or spend some time when you have it with teachers, they're constantly giving you a reflection. They're constantly able to share some good advice, but also just their presence helps. And we learn from that. The Buddha encouraged us to spend time with people who practice mindfulness, because that will incline our own mind towards that quality. If we spend all our time with people who are not very mindful, who are heedless, careless in their behavior, don't have much understanding of what is the path, what is not, well, they tend to lead us astray. And that's not to put anyone down in the world, but it's just a reality that the people we spend our time with affect us. The places we spend our time, the people we're with, how we spend our time, the activities we're involved with, they all have an effect on our mind. So the more we practice meditation, of course, the more we see the problems, the obstacles, but also we can learn what are the supports for training this mind. And when I say supports, I mean the supportive qualities and supportive conditions that we have to develop at all times, not just during meditation. Ajahn Chah used to encourage us to just sit and do it. You say things like, just do it. And that's one quality it's hard to put a single word on it, but you might say it's that quality of just being willing to put effort in to your practice. Just do it and see what happens. Of course, we don't know what will happen when we practice meditation for any period of time, how our mind will be, what will come up. We may be familiar with our old patterns of thinking and habits and so on, but still we don't really know from day to day. So sometimes you just have to do it and be willing to put up with whatever comes up. Be put up with your own doubts, your own restlessness, your own boredom, put up with the feelings in the body, the sensations in the body, itches, pains, feelings of tiredness. You have to put up with the external conditions, which are not always conducive. Sometimes there's too much noise, or the air temperature is wrong, or there's things happening around us that are distracting. We just have to do it and put up with all this stuff and learn how to let go within the middle of all the different experiences we're having, whether it's our own internal mental activity or whatever's going on around us. And that sticking with the practice, sticking with bringing out mindfulness, being ardent, being aware, patient, putting effort in, is generally where you learn, isn't it? You learn by making these qualities really strong, clear in your mind. And they have a sort of a brightening effect on the mind, dispelling some of the darkness of distraction. And as they become stronger, then you work through things, you let things go. And you learn that you can let things go. You don't have to follow every train of thought. You don't have to believe every opinion that comes up. You don't have to take interest in every sound you hear or every memory that pops up into your mind. You can also just let them go and get better at it. You also learn to trust in the process of letting go as you meditate, that it's okay to let things go, even thoughts that seem really important. Especially plans or stuff you have to do in the future that seems pressing on your consciousness as you meditate. You can afford to let it go. It won't change much, and it probably improve the very activities and things you're going to have to do in the future will probably be improved by this practice of letting go, because your mind will be clearer and you have more self-control. So this is what it means to practice. Sometimes we just have to do it and put up with all the screams and the whining and the whinging and the complaining and the worrying and the sleepiness and the apathy and the dullness and the boredom, the whole range of experience, putting up with whatever the mind throws up, but not giving in to it, giving up to the practice rather than giving in to the mental defilements, the hindrances, the distractions. And that's something you just keep doing, isn't it? That's the ardency. Keep learning from your experience, keep putting effort in, and you do become little by little more skillful, more wise. You become bolder, your mind becomes slightly, goes to a slightly higher place where it can see, even though we still have plenty of attachments and distractions in the mind, they're not that powerful, because if we can see ourselves letting them go once or twice, we know we can do it. So you gain some confidence from that in your practice. Of course, round the corner there'll always be something else that you can't let go of yet that knocks you for six, and you have to be very patient with that and you get caught out. But you learn that, and you learn that you can pick yourself up and keep developing the mindfulness, the effort. But then the next part of the practice is how do you do it when you're not sitting on your cushion really trying at your hardest with your meditation. When you finish your meditation and you go off and you're confronted with all the sense impressions that the world can bring you. Food and people and entertainment and work and all kinds of different experiences popping up in your day. How do you practice with them? Well, you're using the very same qualities that you're bringing up in meditation, and you just have to do it. You go off into your day and you just do it, but you do your best to return to this quality of mindfulness, clear comprehension and ardency through your day in the best way you can. And where real wisdom comes is you start to learn what supports your practice and what is a danger, what is conducive to your practice and what is harmful to your practice. And that's where we're developing wisdom, right view. So you see, all the meditation teachers I've had the good fortune to meet, live with, you see they all have various qualities in common. And one thing is they've all practiced dana barami a lot. When we practice meditation, we're often not thinking of dana, but actually, this practice of letting go, renunciation, it begins with the practice of giving, sharing in different ways in daily life. And it becomes an attitude that you develop as part of who you are, part of your day. The attitude of sharing, giving, because there are always opportunities to share, to give to people or animals, to yourself occasionally in your day. And this practice of dana or giving, it's the forerunner of the very same renunciation that you practice when you're meditating, letting go of different thoughts, opinions, attachments, distractions. That's letting go. When you're practicing dana and giving and generosity in a more normal situation, you're practicing the very same quality of letting go of something that you're attached to, something that your mind is taking ownership of, you're giving it up when you practice dana. The very first time I went to stay with Ajahn Mahabua, he came up to me the first day in the monastery as we were preparing to go out on alms round as monks. You do that every day. And he looked at me in the face and said, "Where did you come from?" He was a monk who was very direct with his speech, and he asked me, "Where did you come from?" Because he obviously hadn't seen me before. And I said, "Oh, I've come from Ajahn Chah's monastery in Ubon, which is another province in Thailand." And straight away he gave me an impromptu talk on how generous and kind Ajahn Chah was as a teacher. And he said how valuable that was as a teaching, as an example, to have a teacher who's kind and generous. He said this is the beginning, this is the foundation of the practice of Dhamma. Because when we practice generosity, we are naturally renouncing, getting used to renouncing, letting go. Even if it's something very small. Like in Thailand, every day you go on alms round, and particularly in northeast Thailand where I used to live, often the villagers would come out to share what they had with monks, but often all they had was plain rice, many of them very poor. They just give you a small bowl of sticky rice into your bowl, but because many people gave you sticky rice, you gradually got a whole bowl full of it, more than you can eat. But even though it was such a small gift, when practiced regularly, it was a way that linked their mind, their heart with the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, with the monks, and a way that they could begin their day very skillfully, just practicing giving a small act of giving or sharing with the Sangha. You could see over a lifetime how that really helped those people in their, not only in their practice of dana and their maintaining their faith in Buddhism, but also in their practice of meditation. Of course, even to give one small spoonful or ball of sticky rice requires many other actions to be performed. One has to get up early to cook that rice, to prepare it. One has to come and stand out waiting for the monks, sometimes in the heat, sometimes in the rain, sometimes in the cold. All kinds of skillful qualities are developed in that one single act of giving a bowl of sticky rice to a monk. And those same qualities, sati, sampajanya, atapi, are developed even with offering a simple spoonful of rice to a monk. And sometimes people misunderstand this. They look down on a spoonful of rice and think, "Oh, what use is that?" Sometimes we get caught up in comparing and competing. You might look at another person and say, "Oh, they can offer so much, they're so wealthy, they can do something really good with their money, their wealth to support monasteries or charity." So when we let our ego or our sense of self take over, then the conceit arises and we miss the point. The point is not how much you give when you give whether you give a ball of rice or you give a large donation to a charity or a monastery or something. It's the qualities of mind that are taking place, that are arising at that moment. And if it's done properly in the way the Buddha taught, then it's no different from sitting meditation, entering a state of samadhi, sacrificing and letting go of various states of mind. You're cultivating the very same qualities. So the Buddha said, when you practice generosity, practice with mindfulness, practice with wisdom, just as when you practice mindfulness of breathing, sitting on your meditation cushion. Monks also practice generosity, but we don't have much to give materially. But you can practice in other ways, can't you? I used to have a friend who lived in a hut in the forest, and animals being the way they are, they know where a safe place is. So this cobra worked out that this monk's meditation hut in the forest was a safe place to live. So it found a hole underneath the hut and lived in the hole underneath this hut. And cobras are venomous, dangerous snakes. Definitely not something you want to step on in the middle of the night or when you're not looking. So this monk became quite nervous because he had to live with a cobra every day right next to him. But he was quite smart. He thought, well, what can I do? Well, this cobra still needs to drink, so maybe I can make friends with it. And so he got a little plate of water and put it down. Every day he'd put down a plate of water for the cobra. So it was like an act of generosity, an act of friendliness. He was still very nervous about the snake, but at least he had this thought, I've done something good for this snake, I don't wish it any harm. And he lived for many, many months in that hut and never had a problem with the snake. The snake went and did snake's business, and the monk did monk's business, and no problems arose. So even if you have very little to give, even just water, it can be a very beneficial thing for yourself and for others. So the Buddha encouraged us to practice generosity every day in small ways, acts of kindness, generosity, giving material things, sharing, or on the level of the giving of forgiveness or the giving of advice, giving of words of support and so on. Every day we have opportunities for that. And if done as a practice of mindfulness, as a part of our path, then it's just the same as when you're sitting meditation, letting go of a distracting thought, a negative thought, an angry thought, a thought of greed or desire. Exactly the same qualities are coming up when you practice generosity. When you do a favor for someone, when you put yourself out for someone else, when you do some act of service for the community that nobody else knows about, you're cultivating these same qualities. And it's getting you in the habit of letting go of your more selfish desires, your attachment to your own suffering and problems. As soon as you practice any form of generosity, your problems diminish because you're thinking of other people. You're seeing that they have problems like you do, maybe they have worse problems than you do, because there's always someone worse off than us in the world. So how do we practice mindfulness, clear comprehension, and ardency in daily life? Well, begin with generosity. And that's generosity as an attitude, just an attitude. As far as what you do and when, well, opportunities will present themselves quite naturally, you'll find. But as a practice, you're developing the same qualities as you do in meditation. And the same with the practice of sila, morality. We all know the basic sila of the 5 precepts. These are training rules, training guidelines that we undertake voluntarily to try and bring up mindfulness, restraint, various useful, skillful qualities in our mind through the practice of sila. And it keeps us out of trouble, and it keeps us at peace with other people, with ourselves, frees us from feelings of regret, guilt, and so on. But really the qualities you're developing with the practice of sila, again, the same qualities as you're practicing meditation. This is why the Buddha encouraged us to develop sila as an ongoing daily practice, to the point where it's just the norm. It's just normal for you to keep the 5 precepts, to think in that way. When you practice the 5 precepts, you undertake them voluntarily to train your mind to refrain from killing, so to cultivate respect for life, compassion, kindness, refrain from stealing, to respect for property, not to take what is not yours, respect for other people, how they would feel if you took their property, so you don't. Respect for relationships, and to refrain from sexual misconduct, so again, respecting other people, their partners, your partner, and so on. And to refrain from lying and deception in our speech. Again, cultivating the quality of honesty, truthfulness, respecting relationships by not damaging relationships by lying to others. And then refraining from intoxicants that cloud the mind and lead us to break the other precepts. So dedication to sobriety, again, to mindfulness, clear comprehension. Why don't we drink? Because it takes away our mindfulness and clear comprehension. So by not drinking, you're already meditating. It's another way of answering the question, why don't you drink? Because I meditate. If you meditate, you don't drink, you don't take drugs. It's as simple as that. If you want to preserve your clear consciousness, as well as your clear conscience, but your clear consciousness so that you can see and penetrate the Four Noble Truths, free yourselves from attachment, free yourselves from suffering, you need a clear, sober state of mind. It's as simple as that. Doesn't matter what anyone else says, their opinions and views about these things. If you want clear mind, then don't drink, don't take drugs. So practicing the precepts, you're also cultivating the very same qualities that you do when you sit meditation. Mindfulness, clear comprehension, effort, energy, compassion, kindness, generosity. It's all in there. You're developing a set of values that protect you from creating bad karma and suffering and bring many good things. Develops good relations with other people, respect for other people and their property, and peace of mind. And this isn't peace of mind so that you can get lost in the conceit of I am a good person by keeping the 5 precepts, I'm better than others, I'm pure. It's not the purpose. The purpose is to develop clarity, mindfulness, clear comprehension so you can see and understand the truth. And the truth, the Dhamma, is impersonal, so there's no person to be better than, worse than, or to compare with other people. The keeping of the precepts is simply the natural, wise way to live when you're training this mind to free it from suffering. It's just common sense. It's just basic common sense. It's not to boost our ego or to show off or to make ourselves feel bad or guilty when we break the precepts. It's really something just to develop this clarity of insight and Dhamma, to develop mindfulness and gradually to shed negative qualities, greed, anger, delusion, through on the first level, on our speech and our actions. Just as people catch COVID and then after they've recovered from COVID, they shed their COVID. You hear about this, they're shedding their COVID, so the people go and check the sewage and they find there's still COVID infection in the sewage. It's because people are shedding their COVID. We're shedding our negativity when we keep the precepts. So you'll still get greed, anger, delusion coming up in your mind, but you're not giving into it. You're letting it go. So practicing precepts is a practice of letting go. Letting go of the strongest desire to kill, steal, tell lies, drink, and so on. You're shedding those desires, those mental states that lie behind the breaking of the precepts. And it becomes just part of who you are, it becomes normal. Like again, as a monk you live in the forest, so sometimes you're in situations where you're tempted to kill. Usually it's bugs, isn't it? It's mosquitoes, flies, ants. Sometimes you get stung, but if you're training in the precepts, quite quickly you get to the point where just the thought to kill never enters your mind, because you learn how to use wisdom and skillfulness to solve the problem, deal with the problem without breaking your precept, because you know the breaking of a precept will create negative karma, bring you regret, bring you problems, create problems for others or other animals. So you learn a whole new different way of thinking. So say a bull ant, it's a kind of ant you get in Australia which is very painful. A bull ant bites you, you don't think of killing it, you just think, how can I get it off me and get away from it as quickly as possible and in the best possible way? But the thought to kill doesn't enter your mind once you've trained in precepts. Or back to snakes again, I remember once I was in a kuti in Thailand, the kutis in Thailand, because it's a hot country there, very open windows, open spaces so that bugs and lizards and snakes and things can come in and out quite easily. I remember one night we finished our evening meditation, went back to my hut, it was about 9 p.m. So a bit tired and it's dark and I didn't have much lighting, there's no electricity or anything. So I walked into my hut in the dark, just remembering the way in through practice, and then lit the candle, and in the corner of my hut was what they call a green snake, ngu kio, which are incredibly fierce snakes which like to attack lizards and geckos and rats. And they'll attack people as well and bite you, and they may or may not be lethal, but they certainly hurt you and can paralyze you. And it was in the corner of this small hut. It's only about 2 meters square, so not a very big space. I was standing there, lit the candle, and this snake was up, ready to attack me. It was ready to jump at me. But I noticed it had a gecko wrapped around it. The gecko's jaws were wrapped around the snake. They'd obviously had a fight. And then I noticed in my hut there was a couple of books strewn around, and a few of my robes were strewn around. They'd obviously had a big fight while I was out. Fight to the death, because the snake wants to eat the gecko. But the geckos are fearless and quite powerful, large lizards, which are quite annoying normally when they're alive. They're annoying because they poo everywhere and make a loud noise, but not annoying enough to want to kill them. But the snake wants to kill it because it wants to eat. So this snake had a gecko stuck in its side, and it was ready to attack me as well. It was so fired up. I could see it was just so much adrenaline, so much anger and hatred going in this snake. I had to be very careful. So I just sat down quietly to show it that I meant it no harm, and it just watched me for a long time, and then eventually it just went down, coiled up. But it couldn't do anything because it had this gecko stuck in its side, and the gecko wasn't going anywhere. But gradually the gecko died from the poison of the snake, and the snake spent the whole night digesting the gecko, gradually swallowing it from the tail right round to the head until the head let go of the snake, and it just swallowed it. And that took the whole night. But never once did I have the thought to kill it. I thought it would be nice if it left, but I didn't ever think to kill it. It just didn't come up in my mind. And that's what the value of the precepts. It trains your way of thinking, just like the practice of generosity trains your way of thinking, so you tend to be more aware of other people and their suffering and think of ways to alleviate or help others. Training in the precepts trains you to think like the precepts. So instead of thinking kill it, you just think, what shall I do? And in that situation there wasn't much I could do. I said, I'll just wait. And ended up waiting the whole night, and in the morning it slithered away with a huge bulge where the gecko was in its stomach, and went away into the forest. But I never once had the thought to kill it. The precepts are like that. They train your way of thinking, so you're both mindful and then clearly comprehending in a situation, and your wisdom can function, and you know what is wholesome karma, unwholesome karma, you know why you keep the precepts, and you know how to keep them, and you look for ways how to keep them even if you have provocation or temptation or problems arise. So it's a training your whole way of thinking, your whole attitude to life in line with the Dhamma. And these are exactly the same qualities that you're cultivating in meditation, no different. You need mindfulness to keep precepts, you need effort, you need clear comprehension, and you need wisdom. Keeping the precepts not only requires those qualities, but it also encourages and serves those qualities. So the more you keep the precepts, the wiser you become, the more skillful at keeping them you become. So how do we practice in daily life in the same way when we're practicing meditation on a meditation cushion on a retreat? Well, you're cultivating the same qualities, but you're applying them into new situations. So you go to work and you're bringing up mindfulness with the different tasks you have to perform, driving your car to work, whatever the work is you're involved with, developing the ability to pay attention, to clearly comprehend what you're doing, interactions with other people, you're using the precepts again, mindfulness of speech particularly. Exactly the same qualities in meditation you can develop in your daily life. You're developing the same guidelines, the same principles, the same values that you are on your meditation cushion. You're developing in your interactions with other people and work situations and social situations and so on. So our practice, our challenge of the practice is, how to bring the Dhamma up into our life in all situations. And this is how the Buddha encouraged to practice mindfulness, say, practice mindfulness in every posture. That includes as you're lying down to go to sleep at night, as you're lying down, waking up in the morning, as you're eating, drinking, bathing, going to the toilet, walking here, walking there, talking to people, turning, stretching, standing up, sitting down. All of this becomes part of the practice. And these qualities that you're developing in the practice of dana, in the practice of sila, naturally are leading on to the same qualities you're developing in meditation. So I said earlier, Lumpur Mahabua, when I first met him, gave me a talk all about the benefits of dana, because he understood, you practice generosity, dana, kindness. When you come to meditate, it's much easier to let go of the different distractions that come up, because you've already been doing it in your practice of dana or the practice of sila. So these different aspects of the practice all support each other, they all work together. As Ajahn Kalyano used to say, the practice is like a circle with these different segments: dana, sila, samadhi, panya. These Pali terms: generosity, morality, calm, and then insight or wisdom. They're like different segments of the circle, but they all join together to form one big circle. And they're interlinked, interwoven. You can't really separate them out, because the same mind is developing all these qualities, cultivating them simultaneously. So it might sound a bit simplistic, but somebody who's practiced dana will generally understand quite well how to practice meditation. When you come to meditate, you know about letting go, because you've already been doing it. Somebody who's been practicing sila, keep following the 5 precepts, will know about letting go, and when they come to meditate, they can use that same practice of letting go of impulses to follow anger or greed, break the precepts. They've already been working with that. So all aspects of the practice work together to support each other. They all become part of the whole. And the whole is this one mind. We're training this one mind. And you drive a car to work. You can drive the car with generosity, sila, samadhi and panya, or you can drive the car with the mind of a yaka, a monster. You can working your way through the traffic, swearing and cursing and getting angry and fuming, and just like an angry yaka. You've got your club is on the seat, ready to hit the enemy. That's the mind that has given up the practice and forgotten the practice and is not applying the practice. It's far away from the mind of the meditator, far away from the mind of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. We all know what it's like to be the monster. Our job is to tame the monster and bring it back to a place of normality where you've got it under control, and then you can do good things with it. And you read the text from the time of the Buddha, yakas can be tamed, and then they can do good things, and they can come to practice the Dhamma and help people to practice the Dhamma. And they're very powerful creatures. They're giants, but they can do good as well as bad, but they have to be trained. In the time of the Buddha, the people the Buddha would hold up as examples to follow are people like Anathapindika, the wealthy businessman who gained fame, gained notoriety, good reputation for his practice, but gained faith in the Buddha. And how did he live? Well, he founded his practice on the practice of generosity. He was a wealthy man because he was not only a good businessman, but he'd done so much generosity in the past, it was all flowing back to him. But he spent a lot of his wealth on supporting those in need, the poor, the sick, and then the Sangha. seeing the value of Sangha. He had the utmost faith and respect for Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So he's what we call a Sāvaka. The Sāvakas are those who have faith, respect, and listen to the Buddha and to the noble ones. If you're still caught into the stubbornness that rejects what the Buddha said, well, you're far from being a Sāvaka. And you have to take what the Buddha said, contemplate it, but then gradually you'll start to believe what the Buddha said. You realize it's true, so you become a Sāvaka. Anathapindika was like that. So he devoted everything to the Buddha. Originally he didn't know the Buddha. He didn't know the Buddha was an enlightened teacher. He had faith in other teachers. Whereas when his friend had great devotion to the Buddha, and he realized there must be something special in the Buddha. When he went to his friend's house, and his friends ignored him because he was preparing for a lunch offering to the Buddha, a meal offering for the Buddha. He didn't have time for an Anathapindika. He thought, well, this must be a very special teacher, because my friend normally doesn't ignore me. So that got him interested. So he started to listen to the Buddha, follow his advice, and the faith arose, and then he started practicing. He became a Sotapanna. But the Buddha praised him and said, this is how good lay people practice. They practice generosity when they can, in whatever way they can. They uphold their faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. They meditate, they practice the precepts. Anathapindika used the precepts as his guidelines in daily life. And he had kindness. He wanted to bring his own son into the Dhamma, but his son wasn't interested. A typical teenager, more interested in friends and socializing and other things. But he's smart enough to think, how can I get my son involved? So he paid his son to go and listen to the Dhamma and come back and tell him. To the point where his own son became so impressed and inspired by the Buddha, he no longer needed to be paid. He just said, I don't need payment anymore, I'll go. And Anathapindika even got to the point where he gave so much of his wealth away that he for a while he went into poverty. But he had no doubt that what he was doing was the right thing to do, because he trained himself in letting go, in renunciation, in generosity, in kindness. He had strong faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, so it didn't bother him that he had given all his wealth away, because he had inner wealth. Even when the devas, the house deities that looked after his house, complained to the Buddha, they didn't want to stay with him anymore, because he lost his glow in their sense. They're still very worldly, and the devas went to the Buddha and said, he's given all his wealth away, he's lost his way. And the Buddha said, shame on you, devas, go back and help Anathapindika, he's doing good things, have a bit of faith. So he even taught the devas, and they came back and sort of had to grit it out until gradually he became wealthy again. People who understand the Dhamma tend to be like that. They're not too worried about a bit of difficulty in their life, not worried about helping other people. If their need arises, they'll do it even if they don't have much for themselves, because they have inner wealth. They have the wisdom, the kindness, the mindfulness, all the good qualities to support them if they are going through a period of crisis. It doesn't matter so much. Why do we not practice? Why do we fall prey to our own inner doubts, fears, greed, anger? It's because we still haven't committed fully to the practice. We haven't got that ardency and that devotion. We haven't got the mindfulness yet. So we fall into the more negative mind states. So we have to keep coming back to it, keep coming back to the dana, to the sila, to the bhavana. It's the one thing it doesn't really matter if you become obsessed with the practice of Buddhism. That's fine, because it'll only lead you to good things. When I say obsessed, I don't mean in a deluded way. I mean just very, very committed to the practice. That's fine, because it will lead you to liberation, freedom from suffering. But nowadays people are so unwilling to commit. They're scared, they're nervous, worried, the future, what's going to happen. So actually it's holding them back. Their own doubts are holding them back. So Ajahn Chah said, just do it. When you're practicing, just do it. When you're practicing generosity, just do it. See what happens. Trust in the process of waking up to the truth, the process of doing good, cultivating wholesome dhammas. And just do it. If there's someone who needs helping, just help them. When the precepts are challenged, just keep them. Don't doubt, just keep them and see what happens. It will bring up some wisdom, and maybe you'll have some difficulties, but you can overcome them and you'll learn from that and you'll grow. Even if you got the deadly snake there, you don't have to kill it. There'll be another way to solve the problem, I'm sure. This is how you practice. You just do it. When you're meditating, your mind is all over the place. Well, never mind, you'll learn from that. You keep practicing, you'll learn from the mind that's peaceful, the mind that's not peaceful, the mind that's happy, the mind that's sad, the mind that's angry. Just do it, and you'll see all this stuff just dissolves, doesn't it? It arises and passes away. Every mood, every doubt, every thought, every worry arises and passes away. That's what these things do. That's what the unwholesome states of mind do. They just arise and pass away. They're really not that important, and they don't have that much meaning for us. Of course, we have to work with them. We have to be patient with those mental states. But in the end, they just arise and cease. That's the nature of phenomena. They arise and cease. They don't last. And when you see that, you don't have to hold on to them. You can let them go, and then your meditation progresses. If you want to experience clarity, peace, wisdom, well, just keep letting go, little by little. If you keep doing it, then good things will arise. But you have to do it. It can't be done, some people try to read their way to Nibbana, hear the talks, read the books, know all the stuff, answer all the questions, can impress their friends. But, just reading, just knowledge isn't enough. It's a good start, but then you have to translate it or put it into practice by doing the practice. And that means sometimes just letting go of all that knowledge, not trying to impress your friends, not trying to have an opinion on everything, but actually letting go of these things. So there's a certain value in the direct approach to the practice. Just do it. And don't give in to the mind's proliferation, all the different theories we have about our life and the world and how things should be and what we want. Don't give in to that. Just let it go. So maybe for tonight I'll just say this much and for the talk, but there's also some time left for Q&A, and so we can see if anyone has any questions.